So I'm back with another excerpt from the Royal Heretic. There are a lot of characters in this story, and all of them are very important. But the story revolves around two main characters, Bakari and Izriamat. Now, yesterday I read a excerpt from the first book from about Bakari that kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that was on his mind. Today I'm going to read an excerpt about Izriamat so you can be introduced to her and get a feel for what she's about. Over 1,000 bulls, cows, goats, waterfowl, and crocodiles had been sacrificed on the great royal son's behalf, but still the gods remained silent. The steps of the temple were slick with their blood, pooling in the inscriptions on the bricks. The air was hot and thick with the smell of their burnings on the funeral pyres from the previous day. Izriamat hoped the storm that was sure to come this afternoon would clear the air in the city. She didn't want to choke on the scent of smoke for the rest of the day. She walked solemnly behind the Nekale and his first wife, trying to keep her face from falling into the apathy she felt for the occasion. Behind her stretched the rest of the royal procession, the other wives and concubines, their children, the royal priests, courtiers, and servants. Each of them was garbed in the dull gray funeral clothes traditional in the capital, gray the color of ash. She stole a glance behind her, watching the long line of dullness trail down the steps of the god's hill and down to the way of the sky. Soon they would leave a trail of red behind them, marring the clean street. It was a shame. They entered the shade of the temple, the air growing hotter and thicker. The vents in the stone ceiling weren't enough to purify the air here, and Izriamat found her eyes beginning to water. The stinging was a blessing. Now it would seem as if she was actually saddened by her stepson's passing. Indeed, it was a shame that one so young was joining the ancestors. But would she mourn any of the Nekala's lineage? No. She prayed daily that their damned line would die out. But as she listened to the shuffling of hundreds of feet behind her, she knew her prayer was folly. The sun suddenly shone again on them, and they entered the open courtyard in the rear of the temple. The funeral pyre was erected in the center of the courtyard, the scent of the olive oil sweet and strong on the breeze. The rest of the procession filed in behind them, crowding into the space and filling the arcade around. Behind her, Izriamat heard the sniffling and sobbings of the princesses, the four of them standing with their nannies. Beside the Nekala, his first wife finally broke down in tears. He put a tender arm around her shoulders. Izriamat had to resist crinkling her nose. She hated his hands. They were the hands of a defiler. After a moment, the crowd parted behind them and the priest entered, carrying the body of the boy on an elaborate palanquin. It took 12 men to carry it, so laden was it with his possessions and items to carry him into the next life. The priest circled about the closest of the royal family, finally coming to a stop in front of the boy's parents. Sobbing, his mother took out a large white feather of purity and tucked it in the boy's crossed hands so that the gods would know his heart was clean. Izriamat kept her disdain locked down. If his heart was truly clean, the gods already knew that. No feather would save his spirit. The Nekala stepped before his eldest son and leaned down, placing a kiss on the boy's lips. It would be his final blessing on his son and heir, former heir. The boy would never inherit the title of Nekala, the incarnation of Kole on earth. That would fall on his next eligible son. Izriamat's nose did wrinkle then. It would be her son. To think that her blood would be forever mixed with his made her stomach twist. For the first time, she wished that her counterpart would conceive again quickly. When her husband stepped back from the body, the priest lifted it again, making a slow, dignified approach to the pyre. Once the palanquin was secured on top, the high priest brought down the ceremonial torch. He bowed to the Nekala, offering it to his sovereign. The Nekala took it solemnly, staring at the unlit wood for some time. Izriamat leaned slightly, attempting to get a hint of his expression. He was supposed to begin the incantation to ignite the torch with a sacred fire. Even the first wife glanced over at him, unsure. Another few awkward moments passed, and he finally took a deep breath to begin. The torch burst into flame, the Nekala's face still stoic. He passed it to the priest, who in turn approached the pyre. The celestial flame eagerly took to the kindling. Flames leapt into the ceiling. The smell of a myriad of herbs filled the room. It was a nearly successful attempt at masking the smell of burning flesh. The entire party stood there, watching the fire for nearly an hour. Wave after wave of heat washed over them until everyone was covered in a fine layer of sweat. Izriamat resisted the urge to fan herself. What she would give to be near the sea again and feel its cooling breeze. The last of the fire died out, its fuel crumbling at last into ashes. The ceremony was done, and she held her sigh of relief. The crowd parted again to let the Nekala pass through. Izriamat stepped aside for her husband and the great royal wife. Her counterpart wept heavily, but their husband didn't. One could think it was a sign of strength, but she could tell it was something else. There was a cold, empty look to his eyes. Unease stirred deep in her core. As she filed in line behind them, a chill ran up her entire body. Her husband was a deeply emotional man. This death had wounded him like no other. His sorrow would last for untold months, but there was something more to it. They passed from the temple, and the feeling wouldn't abate. There was more brewing in his heart and spirit than sadness. So that was another excerpt from the Royal Heretic. This book is on sale now for this week, and as is the other books of the series, Heretic's War and God's War. This is a great epic fantasy series. You should really check it out. It's available from MV Media and anywhere books are sold, and I hope you get a chance to read it and enjoy it. Y'all take care. Peace.